So the last portion of the presentation is going to look at some how HERS ratings are incorporated within other programs and regulations, and the three areas are going to be energy codes, green building programs, and then utility programs. So first of all, HERS is a compliance option in the energy code, only in the 2015 and the 2018. Back if you're in a state under the 2009 or the 2012, the ERI is not an option in there, but it is for 2015 and for 2018. So the ERI itself, it's in section R406 in the code. In the 2015 code, there was this generic language which said that the ERI is this integer value that's based on a scale where 1 point equals a 1% change in energy use. The reason that there's generic language in the 2015 code is that RESNET had not yet finalized standard 301, so it couldn't be referenced within the code. So we had to describe what an energy rating index was in just generic terms. For the 2018, the good news is that the RESNET standard is now referenced. So instead of having this generic language, there's specific language within the standard that explains exactly what the ERI is, or what the ERI is and how it is calculated. So the 2018 adds that reference standard, which was an important addition. So the ERI is adopted in 15 states. It may be a little bit higher now, maybe 16 or 17 now, but as of the end of last year, it was adopted in 15 states, and I think that number will continue to grow. And the way that the states have adopted it, some of them have amended it, some of them have left it exactly as it is, and some of them have kind of taken a hybrid approach to how they deal with the ERI in their state code. I think the most unique thing about the ERI is that it's the only compliance path that requires verification by an approved third party. So none of you can do a prescriptive path or a performance path. Those do not require verification by a third party. The code official, the term approved is italicized in the code, and that's because it has a definition, and it means that the code official is responsible for determining who an approved third party is. So RESNET HERS raters are going to be the most common option, because there's not a lot of other certifications out there that would provide the knowledge to and qualifications to do the ERI. The question about solar often comes up. So the HERS index score, the HERS index itself, the standard, allows renewable energy to impact the index score. That's really the only way that you can get down to a net zero energy home. So the issue is that there was concern about builders using solar to trade off efficiency measures like insulation, windows, and even HVAC. This is especially if they, in the states where a builder could get a no upfront cost lease option, where they're getting the solar installed and then basically turning the lease over to the homeowner when they move in. So that was the biggest concern, that builders could reduce their index score fairly significantly with renewable energy, but weren't actually incurring any upfront cost. But they were greatly reducing the actual efficiency of the home. So then some states decided to address this on their own, and they said, how should renewables be addressed? Texas said that renewables are not allowed to impact the ERI. Massachusetts and Vermont kind of took a hybrid approach where you have to, meet a certain target score before you can allow renewables to count. And other states have been silent. They have not addressed the issue at all. The real question. Go ahead. Question.
Well, I was just going to say, I think here in Michigan, we don't address renewables per se. However, we do require you have to hit IECC 2009 baseline efficiency standards, and then from there you can do whatever you want. Do you see that to be a little more normal?
Yes. Yeah, I think, that's a good point. I think that is very common. Yep. Before I move on to the next one, let me get to a couple questions that came in. One asks, are you required to cross-check HERS score with multiple software to eliminate the discrepancy? with the software. No, there's no requirement. Most HERS raters are going to default to using one software because once they learn the software, they get comfortable with it. They're going to continue to use that software. They're going to continue to go back to it. You're not going to see many HERS raters that are looking across multiple softwares to compare scores. It's not going to happen very often. One more question: does HERS climate zone match IECC climate zone? And the answer to that is yes. So for the 2015 code, there's no mention of renewables. It doesn't get addressed at all. But for the 2018, there was a change. There was a proposal put in with support from installation industry and builders and code advocates. There was a pretty large group that came in to support this proposal. And what it does is it makes it, if you want to use renewables, it puts in a 2015 envelope backstop. In other words, if your builder is building a home and he wants to use the ERI path and he wants to put solar on that home, the envelope has to meet the minimum requirements of the 2015 levels. But without renewables, there's just like the 2015 code, there's a 2009 IECC backstop. So if you're not using renewables at all, your minimum envelope levels still have to be compatible or compliant with the 2009 IECC. So there's a lot, I think I mentioned this already, there's a big role for raters to play in energy code compliance verification. You'll see back in the 2009 code, duct testing became mandatory. In the 2012 code, duct and envelope testing both became mandatory, and they continue to be mandatory through the 2018 code. And then you'll also see that they start with the 2015 code. There's a reference standard, an ASTM E779 reference standard for the envelope leakage testing, how that is to be done. Then in the 2018 code, on top of the ASTM standard, the RESNET ICC standard 380 gets added in. As more reference standards get put into the code, it's pushing code officials to just require that a third party provide verification of compliance. And so that the role for raters and for rating field inspectors will continue to increase as the codes get more stringent and more reference standards get included. So there's other programs that also use the HERS index. This is a fairly short list of them, but there's national programs that are common ones like Energy Star and the National Green Building Standard, LEED for Homes, DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program, and Passive House as well. Those national programs that use HERS as the baseline. Sometimes in some cases it may be required that you meet a certain HERS index, or it may be an option that you can use to comply. And then there's local and regional programs as well, and you probably know the ones in your territory, but a big one in the Southeast is Earthcraft House. There's Build San Antonio Green. There's several hundred local and regional programs across the country that also will either require or allow HERS as a means of meeting energy efficiency requirements. And then there's utility programs like Energy Right Solutions that TVA runs. There's an Alabama Power program called Superior Solutions. Xcel Energy has energy efficiency programs. There's over 70 utility programs utility energy efficiency programs in the U.S. So if you do LEED for homes, there's an energy and atmosphere prerequisite for minimum energy performance. First, you have to complete all the mandatory measures for Energy Star for Homes version 3, and then you have to achieve a HERS index rating that either meets or exceeds the Energy Star HERS index, and that's a minimum prerequisite just on LEED for Homes for energy performance. In addition to that, there's a credit you can get for annual energy use. There's two options to it. One of them is an energy budget. So based on Energy Star version 3 reference home with modifications. So Energy Star decided that they thought there were a couple of flaws within the HERS calculation, and they decided to tweak the way that Energy Star uses HERS to calculate their index score. And within LEED actually made a few more specific modifications to the reference home. And then for that one, you get points based on a % reduction in energy use compared to the reference home. So the more you reduce the energy, the more points you can get for the annual energy use credit. Yeah, option 2 is a HERS index score with a home size adjuster. So you have to you get increasing points for a HERS that's 70 or lower, and you earn 1 point for every 4% decrease in conditioned floor area compared to the Energy Star home. So if you have a smaller home that has less conditioned floor area than the Energy Star reference home, you can start to gain points for this credit by using option 2. And then an important note, the LEED for Homes version 4.1 will no longer allow a prescriptive pathway for compliance. So the performance pathway is going to be the only one that's allowed, which is going to be your HERS index option for LEED for Homes version 4.1. So for utility energy efficiency programs, there's a group called the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, or CEE. They're a large organization that represents program administrators that are responsible for ratepayer-funded energy efficiency programs across 46 states, as well as DC, and they also represent some in Canada as well. In 2017, 2016 and 2017, there were more than 70 of their members offered some type of energy efficiency program. And so the next logical question is, what programs were they? And here's a listing of the most popular programs that were mentioned when they polled their members and said, what specific energy efficiency programs are you offering incentives for? And Energy Star was the most common, and HERS index they're kind of one and the same, but almost 60 utilities that are offering incentives for Energy Star and HERS index scores. And then some of them have developed their own prescriptive measures to offer incentives. And then the LEED comes up, DOE Zero Energy Ready Home, Passive House, and then Earth Advantage, all programs that are being used by utilities to provide incentives for energy efficiency.